It seems to be an issue on which most have an opinion: politicians' pay. This week, Premier Lara Giddings offered public servants an olive branch in return for restricting public sector wage rises to 2% in last week's state budget. She tabled legislation to do the same for politicians. But less than 2 decades ago, the consequences of politicians interfering in their own wages was considered instrumental in the downfall of a government.
That's $800 a week rise for the Premier. Most Tasmanians would be happy to earn $800 a week, let alone get a rise of that amount.
They ought to be strung up.
It stinks.
They don't deserve it.
I think it's a disgrace.
It was 1993 and the Premier of Tasmania was the Liberals' Ray Groom. The economy was in dire straits.
What upsets many is that this comes on the heels of protests against a government which has shed some 4,000 public sector jobs due to cost cutting.
That was 18 years ago. In 2011,
we have tried to limit the impact on public sector staff, but we cannot continue to maintain a public service that is unsustainable.
Last week, when the budget was delivered, unions were already rallying in protest.
It's a joke to think it's not going to be frontline services. She's got $102 million from health in the first year. That is frontline services.
In a bid to plug a $113 million black hole, Lara Giddings has imposed tough new savings measures. There are cuts across every government department and public servants are set to bear the brunt, with 1,700 jobs to go and a limit of 2% on wage rises. Politicians were to be immune from the cuts. Not only that, next month they were set to receive a pay increase. Last week, Lara Giddings was happy to keep it that way.
One of the strongest principles I think that we need to abide by is keeping out of setting our own salaries, Mr. Speaker.
But is it now Groundhog Day, with Tasmanian parliamentarians set to receive an increase of 4.2% in their pay packets from next month? This week, she bowed to pressure and had a change of heart.
I believe at this time the Parliament needs to show leadership by limiting the imminent increase due in parliamentary salary levels to 2% in line with the state wages policy as announced as part of the 2011-12 budget.
The bill passed by the lower house yesterday, as amended by the Liberals, intends to cap wage rises at 2% a year for the next 4 years, in line with the general public sector.
I believe that taking such action would be regarded by the Tasmanian community as highly responsible in times of financial pressure.
Some don't see politicians setting their own salaries as responsible action.
And they're going to find the same problem that happened in 1993. When the cap comes off, what do? Because they will be getting a very large pay salary as the relativities are re-established once the cap comes off, and they will be confronted with exactly the same thing, and then there will be public outrage at the size of the restoration of the relativities.
Richard Herr recalls the consequences of 1993. The 40% politicians' pay rise came with a corresponding promise to cut the number of seats in Parliament.
Oh, I remember it very vividly. It was one of those watershed events in Tasmanian politics. It changed the character of the state politics and indeed ended up truncating the Parliament and making it an ineffective institution.
Quite frankly, I believe a significant increase in parliamentary salaries is essential to parliamentary reform in this state.
What they're saying is they want the money in the pocket, and they're asking us to believe that they will deliver the trade-off in the future. I, for one, am extremely sceptical about whether we will ever see a reduction in the number of politicians.
As it turned out, then union boss Jim Bacon was to become a key architect of the reduction in size of Tasmania's parliament when he became leader of the Labor Party and led it to electoral success in 1998. For his efforts, Ray Groom lost his majority at the next election.
To determine the outcome of the 1996 election. And so because of that anger and the consequences of it, a system was set up to try and take the setting of parliamentary salaries out of the hands of parliamentarians.
In 1996, the State Industrial Commission convened a special tribunal which set the current wage-setting formula. Richard Herr thinks it'd be a retrograde step to return to politicians setting their salaries.
Is it just plain politics? Is it a short-term political fix?
Well, it was even silly politics when you look at it. Something that would have gone ahead and been defended as a normal process that's been in place for 14 or 15 years.
He says the lower house is being populist.
Somehow playing to the crowd, but not playing politics very smartly. I think it was unwise.
Professor Herr says the system is going to have to be re-examined soon anyway because of changes to the way federal politicians are paid. Federal MPs' allowances are about to get rolled into their salaries, which will give them a significant increase.
Get the special tribunal to look at the relativities. If it's necessary to adjust them downward, as it will certainly be in any case, as I say, if the federal government's proposal goes ahead, as we expect it will do, they'll have to do this on a very significant scale.
Order, order.